So I happen to notice a couple of people are armed out there. Your guns talking to you, telling you to kill all of us yet? Because we're told they're sentient beings, right? Just like we were told SUVs were sentient beings and they were actually driving people off of cliffs and all that other stuff a few years back. I'm going to tell you a little story about my life. And I'm going to give a disclaimer here for anybody out here who happens to be in law enforcement, because I know some of you are. Some of the things that I'm going to say today are not designed to be anti-law enforcement in any way. I want that to be crystal clear. But some of the things that I'm going to say today are going to be exposing some of the people that are corrupt, that are not good, that do not adhere to the values of true law-abiding, constitutional enforcing law enforcement. That will happen today. And I use that as an illustration of things that, God forbid, should potentially happen in the future here. In 1996, I was 17 years old. I was a junior in high school. And I took a trip to Phoenix, Arizona. It's warmer there than it is today. After a couple of days of being poked, prodded, about my physicality, mentally, even psychologically, they herded me into a little room with a couple of other people. And some of you might remember something similar to this. They asked me to put my right hand up. So I did. And I said, I Casey Hendrickson, do solemnly swear and affirm that I will support and defend the United States Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that it's been a while, I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And I about broke down and cried along with a couple of other people in that room. I'm a junior in high school, and I go back and I have to finish my junior year before I go to basic training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And when you say that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that is not a terroristic threat. That is an oath of a United States soldier. That is an oath that many people here have taken, that many of you will take one day. And for that, we are put on terrorist watch lists. We are labeled agitators. And they make laws to come and disarm us because we have been trained. That's one of the fears that many of us have today. A lot of people ask me, Casey, where do you see the gun control debate going? Is it an assault weapons ban like Dianne Feinstein? I actually don't see that. Yeah, I know it was defeated. It's going to come up again. Rest assured. Especially after the midterm elections. No, I see something happening that we see happening in European countries. Oh, you got the Second Amendment. Sure, you can own a gun. You just got to lock it up in a sports club. You can't take it home. See, they do this in Europe. They do this in Australia. You can own a gun. Just can't take it home. So your rights haven't been infringed at all because Second Amendment says you got a right to bear arms. Sure you do. Between 9 to 5 with a membership fee, but it's right here for you. That becomes my greatest concern. Isn't it interesting that you got gentlemen back there, they've got these aggressively styled hunting rifles that they like to call assault rifles, right? Same mechanism, same caliber as a hunting rifle I got at home. Same firing rate. They don't care about my hunting rifle. It's the same darn thing, isn't it? But they care about those. Now, why do you think that is? It's just cosmetics. Some of the weapons that aren't on the bans list, you can put them on a new chassis, new stock, turn them into bullpups. Guess what? They're banned, just like that. Same exact weapon, same firing mechanism, same caliber, everything. If this were about safety, they wouldn't be talking about modern sporting rifles or aggressively styled hunting rifles, however you want to call them. They wouldn't be talking about AR-15s, AK-47s, because you're more likely to be shot with a shotgun than any rifle, and you're more likely to be shot and killed in a homicide with a hunting rifle than any of these modern sporting rifles. And of course, we all know you're more likely to be shot and murdered by a bad guy with a handgun than any of these things. So why do they care so much about these? And then we have to look around, and we've got to look at some of the things that this president said when he was a senator. I'm going to take you back to July 2nd of 2008. Senator Obama, he's then a candidate. We cannot continue to rely on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we have set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, and just as well funded. It's July 2nd, 2008, Colorado Springs, Colorado. It's kind of funny, I was reading some of the anti-constitutional blogs the other day, and they said that never happened. It's on his official YouTube channel. It's 15 minutes into his speech. So then we look around and we go, hey, why is DHS purchasing so much ammo? Why is it that letargets.com, which makes targets for federal agencies, why is it that they said they were commissioned by a federal agency to come up with targets for the range that have innocent children, grandma in a bathrobe, and normal-looking individuals protecting their siblings? Not bad guys in masks. Not the Taliban, not Al-Qaeda, not anybody else like that. You, me, and your children on these targets. Why did a federal agency commission them? They called it No More Hesitation. That was the name of the products. Now, they've since removed them, and they've apologized. But on their website at letargets.com, you can still see the letter. We were commissioned by a federal agency for these targets. So a federal agency went to them. I'm assuming DHS, but I don't know for sure. We got the President of the United States running out there and saying, hey, weapons of war don't belong on the street, as he flies drones over our heads, purchases enough ammo to run the Iraq War for 24 years, gets armored personnel carriers, not just civilian variants that they give to SWAT folks, they're actually decommissioned from Iraq and Afghanistan. Why do they need it and not us? Some of you might know me from MNC, some of you might know me from WOWO, some of you might have seen me on television a couple of weeks ago. See, on television a couple of weeks ago, and I know this isn't South Bend, but this, trust me, is a part of it. South Bend got a new police chief. His name is Ron Teachman. He's from Massachusetts. We hadn't had a chance to talk with Ron Teachman yet about where he stood on the Second Amendment. I know Brad Rogers, Sheriff of Elkhart County. I know where he stands. I know where the Mishawaka Police Department stands. I know where many others stand. I know where 340 sheriffs around this country stand. And they stand with you and I. But I wanted to know where the new police chief in the community of South Bend stood. So I was invited to be on public television. Yeah, I knew I was getting into. 3-on-1. But the police chief, I had my suspicions. I just didn't know where he stood. And so while I'm listening to people talk about how psychotropic drugs have no effect on this, even though every mass shooting in the last 20 years is somebody's been on some form of medication like this. 2 weeks before, I lost a friend who would have never committed suicide because he started going on these things to treat an illness that he had. And I'm listening to them call for gun control. And I'm listening to the chief of police say one word over and over and over again. Unreasonable. Now, he didn't say it because of the gun control proposals. He didn't say it when I threw out the stats that a hunting rifle was more likely to be used in a murder. He didn't say it when I said shotguns more likely to be used in a murder than any rifle. He didn't say it when I said that handguns were more likely to be used. He didn't say it when I pointed out the fact that the Federal Bureau of Investigation said that you are 8.5 times more likely to smash somebody's head in with a hammer than to use a gun to do it. He didn't care about any of that. He said unreasonable every time I brought up the United States Constitution's Second Amendment and the Constitution of the state of Indiana. Every single time. And we aired that on my station the next day. And my listeners, people like you, went down to the Common Council meeting. They showed up, and I had a council member call me up and go, "What on earth did you say on your show?" So I didn't do anything. I just played audio from what this man said. He said a group of people came out there, and I'm quoting, and destroyed him. People like you who show up in the cold on your day off, you should probably be with your families, enjoying sports, comforts of home, a couple weeks probably, hopefully, mowing the lawn. But they showed up because he was that important that day. And then the local television station, ABC 57, caught up with the new police chief. He's only been in town since January, by the way. And they said, hey, did they take anything out of context? Is there anything you want to clarify for the people out there? And he goes, I don't want to have a debate about this. At one point, when we were talking on television, I brought up the fact that internment wasn't more than a few decades ago. And I was listening to these three people who are telling us that there is no possibility of tyranny rising in the United States at all, and it's a pipe dream, and it's a conspiracy theory. And I'm reminding them of internment. I'm reminding them of the Irish, the Russians, the Jews, obviously blacks in this country, the Chinese, later internment with the Japanese, Native Americans. I'm reminding them of this history. And it is really funny. There's one thing that is pretty consistent with all of that, aside from government abuse, is that they weren't allowed to have any firearms. Oh, you're just... It's chilling. This is the word that the police chief used. This is just chilling to hear things like that. And this is why we can't have a reasonable discussion. This tie, this tradition of being tied to the Second Amendment is why we can't have a reasonable discussion of gun control in this country. And I find it chilling that he would say that the American people have to arm themselves against the United States government. I interrupted and I said, yeah, I find it chilling too. But how naive and juvenile and short-sighted and ignorant is it for somebody to say that something that just happened in the 1940s can't happen again? And I said, Chief, I would hope that you would stand with sheriffs like Brad Rogers in Elkhart, the police department in Mishawaka, the two counties in rural Indiana that have signed legislation saying they will not enforce any federal gun control law because it is illegal. The 340 sheriffs around the country, the several states that have passed bills doing the same thing, the several counties around the country, dozens of them passing bills that say the same thing, said, I would hope that you, Chief, would also stand with the people. God forbid it ever came to that. And he snickered. We know where he stands. He doesn't stand with you. He doesn't stand with me. But these are the people that we're facing. And I often get asked a lot on the program, Casey, you really think that this president is a dictator or a tyrant or anything else? I'll tell you what, it's an irrelevant question. You see, the Nazis did not have to pass gun control when they came to power. Weimar Republic already did it. When they came to power, gun control was already there waiting for them. You know what they did? They added a little adjustment that made sure that Jews couldn't have them. That's all they did. It's not about whether or not we think individuals right now are tyrants. And you may. But that's not what it's about. It's about them laying the foundation and the framework for tyranny to rise in the future. That's what we have to keep into perspective. That's what we have to think.